Broncos country, welcome back to another video here on the Parker Love Sports YouTube channel. Thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to spend them here with me on the channel. I'm a bit rusty, and that's because I took some time off to get a break, because starting on April 11th, I'm going to have daily uploads, sometimes even double uploads, leading up to the NFL draft, and I will go over that schedule with you guys here in just a little bit. But also, I got sick, so that's why there has been a little bit of time in between my last video and this one. Now, in today's mock draft, we're going to be going over a scenario where the Denver Broncos once again trade up, because to me, I think this is such a very likely scenario where Sean Payton moves up to get his quarterback of the future, to get his guy to shape his offense around for hopefully the next while here in Denver. So I could see the Broncos trading up as a very likely scenario. Not saying it will happen, but yeah, we're going over another one. We've done two trade up scenarios. One where we traded up all the way to number 1 to get Caleb Williams. Of course, that is now off the table as the Bears are going to be taking him at number 1 overall. Then we did one where we traded up, I believe it was to pick 7, just like J.J. McCarthy. But now it's sounding like he's not going to get there. So in this scenario, we're going to be trading up once again to get Sean Payton's guy. And yeah, I hope you guys all enjoy. And that's going to be this scenario for this mock draft. Here in the next few days, I'm going to be releasing a couple videos. We're going to be going over the top 3 players at each position that I would like the Denver Broncos to draft. And it's going to be realistic players. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, for wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is not going to be there. So it's going to be realistic. And then I'm also going to be going over, or I'm going to be making a couple other videos. But that's neither here nor there. As always, before we get started, I just want to remind you that Jesus is King. And I pray that you give your life to him, as he has got a plan and a purpose for you. And I just hope that you accept him with all your heart and believe that he died on the cross for your sins. And if you truly believe he died on the cross for your sins and rose from the dead 3 days later, then you're saved and you get to go to heaven. A lot of people think it's by how many good works we do or how many times we go to church. It's not that at all. Now, those things are good, but it's by putting our faith in Jesus and the works that he did on the cross to save us. Of course, a lot of people don't like that I'm spreading this message, but I don't care, as it's an important message to me. And no matter how big of a platform I have, I'm going to continue to share this message. Now, of course, with that being said, let's go ahead and let's get into this video. So up first, we have my upcoming schedule. This is when the daily uploads are going to start. So starting on April 11th, we're going to be releasing my top 10 quarterbacks for the 2024 NFL draft. And you can kind of see how each day is going to go. Now, I am going to start pre-recording these probably tonight when I'm recording this, so that doesn't matter for you guys, but I'm going to be pre-recording these and then scheduling them to upload. And if I do miss a day, if something comes up, something happens, then you can expect the next day I will say, for example, I know I'm talking very fast. Say, for example, I miss Sunday the 14th when the tight end video is supposed to come out. The 15th, I will release the tight ends and the offensive tackles for the double upload. Now, of course, for some double uploads as well, I will be releasing some other mock drafts, and I'll be releasing some other forms of content to have double uploads sometimes. So be on the lookout for that. But as you can see, it's going to go top 10 quarterbacks, top 10 running backs, top 10 receivers, top 10 tight ends, top 10 offensive tackles, top 10 interior offensive linemen, so centers and guards, and then the top 10 interior defensive linemen, of course, all in the 2024 NFL draft, spanning from April 11th to April 17th. And then we're going to have the top 10 edge rushers, linebackers, cornerbacks, and safeties. And that's going to wrap up the player rankings. And then, of course, on Monday, April 22nd, we're going to do my top 20 players overall in the draft. Then on the 23rd, I'm going to do my final Denver Broncos 7-round mock draft. And then on the 24th, the day before the draft, I'm going to do my final full first-round mock draft. It might be my only first full-round mock draft, but if I do release some before that, this will be my final first-round mock draft. Maybe I'll do one on the draft streams, but speaking of the draft streams, on the 25th, we're going to be streaming day 1, which is, of course, round 1 on this channel. It will be live. Then Friday, the 26th, it's going to be day 2 for rounds 2 and 3. And then Saturday, it's going to be day 3 for rounds 4 through 7. So if you are free and you want to come and hang out, get my perspective, get the players who I would like the Broncos to draft, get my reactions to all the picks, and get my reactions to other teams' picks, come and join. It's going to be super, super fun, and I cannot wait. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and let's look at the trade. So here is the trade that I have us doing to trade up. I don't think, obviously, pick 1 is not going to be available. I don't think pick 2 is going to be available. Pick 3 might be available with the Patriots. We'll see. I think most likely Arizona is the best spot to trade up. And if the Broncos are going to do it, we're going to have to most likely get into a bidding war with Minnesota. Now, the one thing that is working on our side and in our favor is Arizona might want to trade the pick out of the conference. Of course, they are in the NFC. Same thing with the Vikings. Of course, it's not the same division. But if they want to trade the pick out of the conference, we do have that working for us, but it's going to be a hefty price to pay. Of course, jumping up into the top 5 when we're outside of the top 10, that's going to be difficult. It's also, we're going to be paying a quarterback premium price because Minnesota is going to be trying to trade up most likely, unless they want to stick at pick 11, pick the best player available, and then at pick 23 or whatever the pick was that they acquired from the Texans, they want to take Bo Nix or another quarterback that late. But most likely we're going to be in a bidding war with the Vikings. So the price is going to go up, and the price could be even more expensive to trade up with Arizona. But here's what I have. I have us trading our first round pick this year, 12th overall, our third round pick this year, 76th overall, and our fifth round pick this year, 145th overall. Now, we will still have 2 fifth round picks because this is our middle fifth round pick. So we have one that's earlier and we have one that's later. So still 2 fifth round picks, but I have us trading one of the fifth round picks this year. Then I have us trading our first round pick next year, our second round pick next year, and our first round pick in 2026. So after we make this pick at pick 4, essentially it would be another 2-year hiatus of not having a first round pick. So essentially, to put you guys into perspective of what that would be like when we picked Pat Surtain, then we didn't have a pick the next year because of Russell Wilson. We didn't have a pick last year. So I guess 2022 and 2023, we didn't have first round picks because of the Russell Wilson trade. And then we had a first round pick this year. So it'd be another 2-year gap of not having a first round pick if we traded up to get Sean Payton's guy. I'm totally okay with that. If it is Sean Payton's guy, you have to get Sean Payton his guy if you want him to succeed in Denver and run his offense successfully to the fullest. You need to get Sean Payton his guy. It could be more than this. It could be a more expensive trade up potentially, but this is what I have as the pick, or not the pick, but the trade up to trade with Arizona to get our quarterback of the future. Now, who do we select with that pick? Well, that is going to be none other than J.J. McCarthy, quarterback out of Michigan. Now, I know the fan base is divided between J.J. McCarthy on if we want to draft him, if we don't want to draft him. Personally, I want to draft him. He's one of my guys. He's one of the quarterbacks who I really want the Broncos to draft. Now, if you guys go back and look at a video from about 2 years, I'd say probably a year and a half ago, actually, it was titled something like, "Who's the Broncos quarterback of the future?" This is after the Panthers game and Russ's first season with us, and it was not looking good, so I made a video of potential quarterbacks that the Broncos could take. McCarthy was the second quarterback that I had on that list, so I've been a fan of McCarthy for a while, and I've been watching and studying his game for the past few years, ever since he took over at Michigan from Cade McNamara. Now, if you want to go into further depth of why I like J.J. McCarthy, I'm going to go over some brief bullet points here in this video. But if you want to go into full details, I have another video that I released maybe a month or two ago. It's titled like the top 6 quarterbacks I want the Broncos to draft, something like that. And I go into further explanation of why I like J.J. McCarthy and why he's my guy, and I go into depth of that. So if you want to see the full depth of why I like J.J. McCarthy, go check out that video. I'm just going to go over some brief bullet points here in this video. The first thing that you have to look at is production does not mean everything in college football. Sure, it helps if they produce at a high level, and for the most part, when J.J. McCarthy was called on, he did that, but he was in a pro-style run-heavy offense, which means they are going to run the football a lot. Now, he wasn't a pro-style offense, so that's obviously going to help the transition to the NFL a lot. But you look at the throws that J.J. McCarthy made. He fit them into very tight windows, which are hard to do because the windows in the NFL are going to be very, very tight, and he fit them into some of those windows. It's not this wide open pass that he made a completion to. Now, there were some of those, but he made a lot of passes into these very tight windows. But to me, the biggest thing you want to look at is the traits and the upside and how you can develop those traits. And McCarthy is a very, very, very toolsy player. You look at his athleticism, isn't afraid to scramble, isn't afraid to take off with the football and extend the play with his legs if he needs to. He's got a solid arm. Now, it's not this Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes cannon where you can chuck it 70 yards downfield, but he does have a decent arm to get the ball down the field, throws with some velocity. Now, does need to know how to layer his passes and not constantly throw bullet passes. I will say that. But he has been able to throw decent, decent yardage down the field, throw it with some velocity to get it to his receiver. A lot of his teammates, including Blake Corum, Roman Wilson, say he is a great leader, and he led that team, even though they ran the football constantly. And, he had a great run game. I'm not going to deny that, but you look at guys like Michael Penix Jr., who had 3 very talented receivers who are going to be drafted this year. So I'm not going to hold the great run game against him. Of course, I would have loved to see him throw the football more, but that's just not how the Michigan offense was run. Jim Harbaugh runs a very run-heavy offense, so he didn't get a whole lot of opportunities to pass, but when he did, he was very solid for the most part. So I'm a big fan of J.J. McCarthy. Again, if you want to see my further explanation of why I like J.J. McCarthy, go watch the video that I mentioned previously of my top 6 quarterbacks or something like that I want the Broncos to draft. I'll link it in the description below. I'll link both of them, of Broncos potential future quarterbacks that I released a year and a half ago, and then the top 6 quarterbacks that I want the Broncos to draft in this year's drafts, if you want to go see the full explanation of why I like J.J. McCarthy. But now, with our next pick in this draft, this comes all the way in the 4th round because, of course, our 2nd round pick was traded to the Saints for Sean Payton, and then our 3rd round pick was traded in this trade-up scenario. So our next pick comes all the way here in the 4th round, pick 121, and I have us selecting Justin Ibor, defensive lineman out of Alabama. Now, I am a big, big fan of Justin Ibor. Now, he does one thing well, or I guess one thing that he excels at is run defense, and that's what we need at our defensive end position, because our defensive ends, they're not edge rushers like a lot of times you see they are. I wish Madden would change their, the position, because a lot of people get confused with their terminology. Our defensive ends are not edge rushers. They play as the interior part of the defensive line, where our outside linebackers are our edge rushers in the 3-4 defense. And what Justin Ibor excels at is run defense. And that's what we need at our defensive line group, because we got some guys who can pass rush. You look at Zach Allen, but to me, our biggest weakness was run defense. And that's what Justin Ibor excels at, and he will help that team in the run defensive category. Of course, we signed Malcolm Roach in the offseason, and he could be a starter, most likely a depth piece, but he could definitely be a starter, at least to start this season. But Justin Ibor excels at run defense, and he will help the Broncos in that regard. Does need to develop more as an interior pass rusher, because when it's not a run, you would, of course, like to get interior pressure on the quarterback, not just from the edge rushers. But yeah, interior pass rush he does need help with. But to me, you look at the run defense grade, and he excels at run defense, and that, to me, that's someone who the Broncos should target. In my opinion, he is one of the best run defenders in the class. Of course, needs to develop in a lot of other areas, but yeah, the Broncos need run defense, and Justin Ibor would help the Broncos in the run defensive I guess, category, if you want to call it that. But yeah, Justin Ibor is one of my guys and one of those guys who I want the Broncos to target because most likely we're taking a quarterback in the first round. Maybe we trade back and take one early in the second round if we pick up a second round pick. But to me, Justin Ibor would be one of those guys who I want the Broncos to target at some point in the draft if he's available. And if he's going to be available on day 3, that would be absolutely fantastic for the Broncos and a big pickup for our defense. You can see in 48 games, he has 58 solo tackles, 65 assists, 123 total tackles, 16 tackles for loss, and 9 sacks. The stats don't stand out, but when you watch Justin Ibor play, you'll see how dominant he is in the run-stopping game. Like I mentioned, for about 1,000 times, it seems like needs to develop most likely, or not most likely, he needs to develop mostly in the interior pass rush, maybe a little bit in finishing his tackles and fully wrapping up, but he stuffs gaps and he forces the running back to jump to different gaps to find them to make the play, or he'll take them down himself. So Justin Ibor, one of my favorite players and one of the best run defenders in this entire class. Next up, at pick 136 in the 5th round, I have selecting Jem Bell, tight end out of Florida State. A lot of people seem to be a lot lower on Jem Bell than they were about a month ago. Jem Bell is still one of my guys. I would say maybe he's not my tight end 2 anymore, but probably my tight end 3, I would say. So to me, Jem Bell, he provides the role of that deep threat, that vertical threat, that receiving threat tight end that the Broncos need. Because we got some guys, we got Lucas Kroll, Nate Atkins. You look at Adam Troutman, he's kind of a balanced tight end, but not the biggest receiving threat. Jem Bell would provide that receiving threat for the Broncos. Now, I know we have Greg Dulcich, but Greg Dulcich in his first 2 seasons has been injured a lot. And so I don't know if we can rely on him in being our receiving threat tight end. And so grabbing a guy like Jem Bell to be a receiving threat tight end would be huge for the Broncos. Now, of course, you would love to see him develop in terms of the run game and being a blocker at the tight end position, which he's not that great at right now. So you would like to see him develop, of course. But with the guys we have at the position, you can have some guys roll out there and be blockers, and then you can have Jem Bell go out there on obviously passing downs and be that receiving threat in the middle of, I guess, in the middle of the defense for our quarterback of the future, for J.J. McCarthy in this scenario. So to me, Jem Bell, I don't understand it. Yes, I know that he's kind of, he's just that receiving threat, not really a blocker. But to me, I would love to see Jem Bell in orange and blue. So yeah, Jem Bell is pick 136, and maybe he starts to rise again before the NFL draft. But getting him here in the 5th round is tremendous value. In 43 games, he has 95 receptions In 43 games, he has 95 receptions on 1,260 yards, averaging about 13.3 yards per reception and 9 touchdowns. Of course, he played at Florida State this year, but in previous years, he also played at the University of South Carolina. Now, with our next 5th round pick, remember we only have 2 5th round picks because we traded one to the Cardinals in this trade up scenario. We have Nehemiah Pritchett, cornerback out of Auburn. Look, to me, the Broncos need to add a cornerback to this group. And here's how I would see the cornerback room shaping up. Pat Surtain would obviously be the cornerback 1. Then you have Jaquan McMillan as the slot cornerback. And then at cornerback 2, to me, you have to put Riley Moss there. We traded up for him in last year's draft in the 3rd round. Didn't really get a lot of defensive snaps because of his early injury, and then played a lot of special teams. But I think you have to see what you have in Riley Moss there. If he struggles, you got Damari Mathis, but it's a rebuilding year anyway, so might as well see what Riley Moss has there. But then you have to add another guy to that group. Of course, you have Art Green, who was UDFA last year, but I have us selecting Nehemiah Pritchett here because there does need to be another guy in that cornerback room, and he's more of a developmental guy. Doesn't really excel at one thing. I would say if he would, if I remember correctly, he exceeds very well in man and press coverage. Needs to work on his zone coverage, but I think everything can use some work because he's a very raw corner who has some flashes, but needs to develop in some more areas. And so he's more of a developmental guy who probably doesn't start this year, mostly a special teams player, but maybe potentially in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, he could potentially be a starter for the Broncos. You can see his stats here: 46 games, 81 solo tackles, 34 assists, 115 total, 24 passes defended, and 3 interceptions. He was a solid cornerback at Auburn, but I do think he needs some time to develop in the NFL. But one of those high upside guys we could find in the 5th round here. Nehemiah Pritchett here at pick 147. Then in the 6th round, I have us selecting Easton Gibbs, linebacker out of Wyoming. Now, this might be a little high, but we need to add a linebacker. I think a lot of people don't realize how weak the position is. Of course, we signed Cody Barton to a 1-year deal. Jonas Griffith is back on a 1-year deal. Alex Singleton is still here for another 2 seasons. We brought back Justin Strnad on a 1-year deal, but a lot of these 1-year deals are up. Cody Barton, Justin Strnad, and Jonas Griffith. I don't know if all those guys are going to be back, so we have to add someone at least to that room because we don't want to get to next offseason and be like, oh, shoot. It's tough because Drew Sanders was supposed to be that guy, but he's moving to edge most likely. So we need to address the position of linebacker, and Easton Gibbs is that guy. Maybe a little bit early, maybe a lot of bit early here in the 6th round, but to me, I'm a little bit higher on Easton Gibbs than maybe a lot of people are. But to me, this is more of a developmental guy at linebacker for the Broncos. You can see 45 games play, so he's, I guess, a college veteran if you want. Played in a lot of games, has 361 tackles at the University of Wyoming, 22.5 tackles for loss, 11 passes defended, 1 interception. I know he didn't play the greatest competition at the University of Wyoming, but Easton Gibbs would be someone who the Broncos could very well take because Wyoming is pretty close to the Broncos. Of course, you got Denver, you got Boulder pretty close at CU. You got Fort Collins, which, a little bit further away up in, obviously, well, you got Colorado State up in Fort Collins, which is a little bit farther away. And then you got the University of Wyoming, which is actually pretty close to Fort Collins. So you wouldn't be going too far away at the University of Wyoming, obviously out of state, but still sticking close by and selecting Easton Gibbs here. And then finally, I was selecting Colorado native Drake Nugent out of Michigan. He can play center, he can play guard, and the center thing is kind of nice because we just selected J.J. McCarthy. Why not go get someone who can play center and he's familiar with on his offensive line? Now, obviously, he wouldn't start right away, but someone who's more of a depth guy. We just signed a center. Of course, we have Alex Forsyth, but at 6'2", 300 pounds, he's 23 years old. Fun fact, he played at a rival high school of mine. So I guess one of my high school's rivals. But yeah, Drake Nugent, the Colorado native, staying in Colorado with our final pick in this year's draft, adding some depth to that offensive line. And yeah, that is this mock draft. Let me know what you guys thought of this mock in the comment section below. I'm kind of still used to getting back since it's been 2-ish weeks. I was kind of stuttering. I was using a lot of kind ofs. I was using a lot of ums. So I was using these mannerisms that I'm not a fan of when I'm talking. So I'm trying to get them out of my system and out of my vocabulary. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are of this mock draft in the comment section below. I have another one already made, another mock draft prepared to drop. I'll probably drop that 2-3-ish days time. I want to record my top 10 players at every position, get a lot of those pre-recorded. Then I'll record that one and schedule that one as well. So a lot of videos ready to be recorded. And thank you so much for tuning into this one. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe. My name is Parker, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.